In May 2024, an independent testing lab called ConsumerLab bought 13 of the most popular ashwagandha supplements on the market, products on Amazon, in GNC, at Whole Foods, products people were taking every single day. They tested each one for withanolides, the active compounds that actually make ashwagandha work. 8 of the 13 failed, not a little low. One product contained less than 8% of the withanolides it claimed on the label. Another had just 1.3 milligrams per serving. The best performing product had 72 milligrams. Same category, same shelf. 55 times the difference. I'm Dr. Stack. This is BrainStack Labs. And today, we're going to go through the science on ashwagandha. What it actually does, which products actually deliver it, and what to look for on a label so you never buy a placebo again. Here's why this matters. Ashwagandha is not a fringe supplement. It's not a bodybuilding fad. It has a serious clinical record. The global ashwagandha market was worth close to $1 billion in 2024. That number is expected to double before the end of the decade. That growth didn't come from marketing. It came from results, multiple, randomized, controlled trials, a 2023 systematic review published in a peer-reviewed journal. Real data showing real reductions in cortisol, real improvements in sleep, real decreases in self-reported stress. The science is there. What is also there? An industry that knows most consumers will never look past the front of the bottle. And a regulatory environment where the FDA does not require supplement companies to prove their product contains what the label says before it goes on shelves. Let that land for a second. You can legally sell a capsule that says ashwagandha extract on the front, and if it turns out to contain almost nothing, that's discovered after the fact. By third-party labs that most consumers never hear about. The range of withanolides per daily serving in the ConsumerLab 2024 test, 1.3 milligrams to 72 milligrams. The clinical trials that showed a 30% cortisol reduction used extracts delivering far more than 1.3 milligrams. So before you decide whether ashwagandha is worth your money, you need to understand exactly what it is and why the difference between the root powder in a $9 bottle and the extract in a clinical trial is not a small one. Picture the ashwagandha plant, small shrub, native to India and North Africa. The botanical name is Withania somnifera. It's been used in Ayurvedic medicine for over 3,000 years. Primarily the root, dried and powdered. When supplement companies started selling it in the 1990s, most of them did exactly that. Put root powder in a capsule, slap a label on it, send it to market. The problem? Raw root powder doesn't have a consistent amount of anything. Withanolides, the steroidal lactones responsible for ashwagandha's effects, vary wildly depending on the plant strain, the growing region, the soil, the harvest timing. One batch could have 0.5% withanolides, another could have 3%, another could have almost none. So when the modern clinical research started accumulating in the early 2000s, the researchers didn't use generic root powder. They used standardized extracts, specifically engineered preparations with controlled, documented, reproducible withanolide content. Because if you want to run a controlled trial and measure an outcome, you need a controlled input. You can't do science on somewhere between 0.1% and 3% active compound. We're not sure. Here's the question this raises. If every study that showed ashwagandha working used a standardized extract, and you're buying generic root powder with no withanolide percentage on the label, then is there any logical reason to expect the same result? There isn't. The two extracts with the most clinical data behind them are called KSM-66 and Sensoril. These are trademarked formulations, specific patented products with documented chemistry. KSM-66 is made by an Indian company called Sensoril Biomed. It's a full-spectrum root extract standardized to at least 5% withanolides. It's been used in over 20 human randomized controlled trials. Sensoril is made by Natreon Inc. It uses both root and leaf material and is standardized to at least 10% withanolides, which is why the effective dose is lower. 125 to 500 milligrams per day versus 300 to 600 for KSM-66. A third extract, Shoden, made by Arjuna Natural, is standardized to 35% withanolides and has been shown effective in a 2019 trial at as little as 120 milligrams per day. These are specific ingredients. They're not a type of ashwagandha. They're products with names, manufacturers, and documented clinical histories, and that distinction is everything. Here's what the clinical data shows on the extracts that have actually been tested. A 2019 randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial used KSM-66 at 300 milligrams twice daily for 8 weeks in healthy adults reporting stress. Cortisol dropped by 30% compared to placebo, 30%. Perceived stress scale scores. A validated tool used in stress research dropped by 44%. Those are not modest improvements. A 44% reduction on a validated stress scale is a meaningful clinical result. The same study found improvements in sleep onset and quality, sexual function in both men and women, and self-reported quality of life across multiple dimensions. Let me put the dose question in terms that make it concrete. The 2019 trial used 600 milligrams per day of an extract standardized to 5% withanolides. That means participants were getting approximately 30 milligrams of actual withanolides per day, a product with 1.3 milligrams of withanolides per serving, one of the actual numbers ConsumerLab found in 2024. Would need you to take 23 capsules a day to get to the same dose the trial used. That's not a variation. That's a different product. It's like buying vitamin C that turns out to contain 2 milligrams per tablet. And then, wondering why you still got sick when the trial that showed immune support used 500 milligrams. The molecule is the same, the dose is not. A 2023 systematic review published in Phytomedicine analyzed 9 separate ashwagandha studies. The cortisol reduction across studies ranged from 11% to 32%, depending on the extract used, the dose, and the duration. The consistent factor across all the studies that showed an effect, they used standardized extracts with documented withanolide content. At doses high enough to matter, the mechanism works through the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal system, which is the feedback loop your brain uses to regulate cortisol production under stress. Withanolides modulate this axis. They also appear to enhance activity at GABA receptors, the brain's main inhibitory neurotransmitter system, same system that anxiety medications work on, but only a concentration sufficient to actually engage those pathways. 1.3 milligrams doesn't get you there. Pause right now. If you have an ashwagandha product nearby, go get it. We're going to do a 3-second label audit. Step 1. Look for trademarked extract name. KSM-66. Sensoril. Shoden. If one of those 3 names is on the label, anywhere on the label, you have a standardized extract with documented clinical data. If the label just says ashwagandha root extract with no further qualifier, that's a yellow flag. If it says ashwagandha root powder, red flag. That's bulk material with undefined active content. Step 2. Look for a withanolide percentage. A legitimate product will state something like standardized to 5% withanolides or providing 30 milliliter withanolides per serving. That percentage is the manufacturer's commitment to a specific level of active compound. If there's no percentage, then they're not making that commitment, either because they can't or because they'd rather not. Step 3. Check the dose. For KSM-66, the range used in trials is 300 to 600 milligrams per day. For Sensoril, 250 to 500 milligrams per day. For Shoden, 120 milligrams per day. If a product gives you 100 milligrams of generic ashwagandha extract per serving and doesn't tell you anything about standardization, that's probably not doing much. Expensive doesn't mean effective. In ConsumerLab's 2024 testing, there was no correlation between price and quality. The cost to get an effective 6 milligrams of withanolides from the products they tested ranged from 6 cents to $1.77. 6 cents. A product that passed third-party testing was not more expensive than a product that failed. The companies selling cheap, non-standardized root powder aren't selling you ashwagandha. They're selling you the idea of ashwagandha. And it works as a business model because the word ashwagandha on the front of a bottle is enough for most people. That's not a conspiracy. It's just a market with almost no pre-market verification requirement. The companies that invested in proper extract development, proper standardization, and proper third-party testing, they pass. The ones that didn't, they don't, and most of them don't. Remember those 13 products ConsumerLab tested? 5 passed, 8 failed. Here's what I didn't lead with. Those failures weren't a lab accident. They weren't labeling errors. Every single product that failed was using generic root powder or an unstandardized extract. Every product that passed was using a specific, named, standardized ingredient. That's not a coincidence. That's exactly what you'd expect if you understood the difference between these two types of products. The twist isn't that the industry is corrupt. The twist is that the industry is transparent, if you know what you're looking at. Every company that sold you a bottle with 1.3 milligrams of withanolides per serving knew exactly what they were putting in there. The tests to measure withanolide content are not expensive or complicated. If they wanted to know, they could know. The bet they made, consciously or by inertia, was that you wouldn't check, and statistically, that bet pays off. Most people see ashwagandha extract on the label and assume the capsule is equivalent to whatever study they heard about on a podcast. The study used 300 milligrams of KSM-66 twice daily for 8 weeks. The capsule contains 100 milligrams of root powder with no stated withanolide content. These are not the same thing. So here's the actual ranking by the evidence. KSM-66, the most studied ashwagandha extract in the world. 300 to 600 milligrams per day. Multiple trials. Consistent results. Sensoril. Strong independent evidence, especially for sleep and cognitive outcomes. Lower dose. Good option if you're looking for evening use. Shoden. Newer, but early data is strong. Works at significantly lower doses due to its high withanolide concentration. Generic root powder. Unranked, because there's no consistent product to rank. One batch isn't the same as the next. To bring this together, ashwagandha works. The clinical record is real. The cortisol data is consistent across studies. A 30% reduction in cortisol and a 44% improvement in self-reported stress are not nothing, but the studies that produce those numbers use specific, standardized extracts. KSM-66, Sensoril, Shoden, at doses high enough to deliver meaningful withanolide content. Most products on the market are not those extracts. When you buy ashwagandha, look for the trademarked extract name on the label. Look for a withanolide percentage and ignore the price. ConsumerLab found zero correlation between what you pay and what you get. All the studies and sources I used are linked in the description. The ConsumerLab 2024 report. The 2023 phytomedicine meta-analysis. The individual KSM-66 trials. Read them yourself. We put out one of these every week. If you want to know what actually works, subscribe and drop a comment. Are you currently taking ashwagandha? What does your label say? I'm curious how many people watching this have a product that passes the 3-second audit. I'm Dr. Stack. See you in the next one.